Most men can't handle being alone. Not really. They say they're fine, but silence terrifies them. Stillness exposes them, and so they run, from one woman to the next, from one comfort to another. Why? Because deep down, they're scared to face the man in the mirror, not the one with the mask, but the real one, beneath the noise, beneath the distractions. But the man who stops running, who stays in solitude, he doesn't get weaker, he gets dangerous. Because in the silence, you see clearly, you hear the truth, and for the first time, you meet yourself without the filters. Your mind sharpens, your standards rise, your time becomes sacred. You stop living for approval. You start evolving without permission, and slowly, you become the kind of man no one can manipulate, no one can control. But don't get it twisted. This transformation comes with a price. It's not easy, it's not quick, and it's definitely not comfortable. Before we break it all down, tap like, hit subscribe, and help this message reach the men who need it most. And if this message hits something inside you, don't just listen halfway, because what comes next is what most men miss. Stay until the end. Not for me, but for the man you're becoming. Number 1, you no longer need external validation. There comes a point in every man's journey where he either becomes addicted to approval or immune to it. And that point is often when he's been alone long enough to stop caring. Most men don't make it that far. They spend their lives chasing attention, trying to impress women, gain validation, and fit into a mold they didn't create. They ask themselves, am I liked enough? Do they notice me? Am I good enough in her eyes? But the man who stays single long enough, he stops asking those questions. He stops shaping himself to be accepted. He stops bending for approval, because the moment he no longer needs it is the moment he becomes powerful, not loud, not arrogant, but grounded, clear, unshakable. The man who doesn't seek approval ends up commanding it. He's not chasing attention, he becomes the center of it. He's not proving himself, he becomes undeniable. He's not begging for love. He becomes the one who is loved without effort. And here's the paradox most men never understand. The moment you stop trying to be liked is the moment they like you more. Because you're different. You're not disparity. You're detached, but not cold. Focused, but not bitter. And women, they feel that difference like a shock. They start asking questions. Why doesn't he chase me like the others? Why isn't he trying to impress me? Why does he feel so in control, so hard to read, so magnetic? And the answer is simple. You're not performing. You're not seeking. You've already found yourself. Most men never experience this shift because they never give themselves enough space. They jump from one relationship to another, filling the void. But the man who learns to sit in silence, who learns to value himself above all else, he becomes untouchable. He realizes he is the prize, not her, not society, not external praise. And when he stops trying to earn love, he starts attracting it. She now wants to impress you. She starts performing. She starts chasing. But here's the truth. Not all women can handle that. Some will call it toxic. Some will call it arrogant. Some will say you're cold or too detached. But deep down, they respect it. They're drawn to it. Because every woman is curious about the man she cannot fully read. She's intrigued by the one who doesn't flinch when she withdraws. She tests you, and you don't react. She pulls away, and you don't chase. She creates chaos, and you stay calm. And that's when she knows you're not like the others. You're not weak. You're not controlled. You're free. This is the man she can't manipulate, and that's what keeps her hooked. Most men change who they are to win a woman. They soften their tone, betray their beliefs, say yes when they want to say no, all for the illusion of acceptance. But not you. You don't lower your standards. You raise them. You don't chase a woman. You chase purpose. You chase strength. You chase clarity. And when a woman sees this, when she senses a man with direction, she either rises to meet you or fades away. But either way, you don't lose, because a man who values himself does not beg. He doesn't chase. He doesn't settle. She either fits your life or she doesn't belong in it. And when she sees that your time, your presence, and your attention must be earned, she competes for it. Not because you forced her to, but because you didn't hand it over like every other man. This flips the game. You're no longer trying to be chosen. You are the one who chooses. A man with this mindset is rare, and society doesn't know what to do with him, because the world teaches men to be agreeable, soft, and self-sacrificing, to bend for affection, to seek approval, to compromise their masculinity in the name of being liked. But when a man rejects this conditioning, he becomes a different breed. He speaks less, but says more. He moves slower, but with more power. He doesn't ask for respect. He commands it without a word. And the shift becomes visible. You walk differently. You speak with conviction. You look people in the eye, not seeking approval, but measuring their energy. You stop apologizing for your standards. You stop explaining your vision. You stop giving access to those who haven't earned it. You operate from a place of calm certainty. And that certainty, it makes other men uncomfortable. It makes weak men criticize you. It makes women curious. It makes society uneasy. Because you don't need anyone. You've built yourself up from silence. You've learned to live without applause. And that's what makes you unstoppable. The longer you stay single, the more you see the truth. That most relationships weaken men. That most love is conditional. That most validation is transactional. You stop craving it. You stop chasing it. You start building. And the man who builds in silence becomes the one everyone notices when he arrives. He doesn't speak loudly, but when he walks in, the room adjusts. That's not arrogance. That's earned presence. You've faced your shadows. You've killed your neediness. You've let go of chasing. And now, you're in control, not just of your love life, but your identity. You don't date to fill a void. You only allow someone in when they bring peace, not chaos. Strength, not distraction. Alignment, not confusion. You are no longer a man who needs love to feel whole. You are whole already. That is why you don't need external validation. That is why you walk alone. That is why you are rare. And that is why you will never be forgotten. Number 2, your standards become sharper. There comes a moment when a man steps away from the noise, away from the shallow games of modern dating, and into the silence of self-focus. And in that silence, something sharpens. Not just his mind, not just his direction, but his standards. He no longer tolerates the nonsense. He no longer entertains manipulation. He no longer gives energy to women who think showing up is enough. Because now, he's seen what most refuse to look at. That time is the most valuable thing he owns, and he will not waste it on half-hearted effort. When a man detaches from dating and turns inward, his perception of value begins to evolve. He demands more from himself. So naturally, he starts demanding more from others. He raises the bar in every part of life, his career, his circle, his environment, and especially his relationships. And it's not because he became picky, it's because he became precise. He no longer confuses chemistry with compatibility. He no longer chases a pretty face with no substance behind it. He doesn't get lost in charm. He searches for character. And when something feels off, he doesn't ignore it. He walks. This is the man who refuses to invest in women who bring no value, the ones who demand attention but offer nothing in return, the ones who assume his time, his energy, his presence are free samples. They're not. The man who sharpens himself begins to see the patterns, the shallow conversations, the mind games, the emotional roller coasters disguised as love. He sees through all of it, and he chooses something higher. And here's the paradox. The more selective he becomes, the more attractive he becomes, because women can sense it. They feel the difference between a man who would take anyone just to avoid being alone and a man who chooses carefully because he values himself too much to settle. And in a world full of desperate, approval-seeking men, he becomes rare, uncommon, untouchable. But this shift comes with a cost. Not every woman qualifies anymore. The ones who relied solely on looks, disqualified. The ones who played games to feel powerful, exposed. The ones who offered nothing and still expected pursuit, ignored. And that right there, that is real power. Not in how many women you attract, but in your ability to walk away from those who don't deserve you. That's what most men lack. They lower their standards to keep a woman interested. They break their own boundaries just to be liked. They betray themselves to not be alone. But the man who has spent enough time in solitude sees through the trap. He watches other men destroy their peace, sacrificing dreams, dignity, and sanity for women who don't even respect them. And he knows he will never be that man, because he understands something essential. That attraction is not built through submission, it's built through strength. That a man who does not need love to feel whole is the most dangerous kind of man. Because when a woman meets him and realizes she can't move him with emotion, can't control him with beauty, can't lure him with attention, she begins to fight for his validation, not because he withholds it out of cruelty, but because it must be earned. She pulls away to test him. He doesn't flinch. She provokes him. He doesn't react. She withholds affection. He doesn't chase. He simply observes and moves with purpose, because he knows the one truth most men ignore. Women respect the man who is willing to walk away. A man like this doesn't talk about standards. He lives them. The way he walks, the way he speaks, the way he sets boundaries. It all sends a clear message. My life is valuable. I don't give access to just anyone. And that message, it's irresistible, because most women aren't used to it. They're used to men who compromise, men who fold, men who cave under pressure. But this man, he doesn't negotiate with nonsense. He doesn't entertain low-effort behavior. He doesn't beg for love. He walks. He doesn't complain about the dating market. He doesn't cry about how women behave. He doesn't whine about modern relationships. He simply opts out. He refuses to fish in shallow waters. His time is too precious. His mission too clear. His peace too sacred. So when he does engage with a woman, it's not because he needs to. It's because he chooses to. He selects slowly. He evaluates constantly. He tests as much as he is tested. He doesn't get excited just because she's beautiful. He wants to know, does she bring more than looks? Does she elevate or deplete? Is she an asset or a liability? A partner or a distraction? And if the answer isn't clear, she's removed, not out of anger, not with drama, but with indifference. Because a man with high standards doesn't argue, he simply walks away. And that alone makes him magnetic. When a woman realizes that your attention is earned, that your presence isn't guaranteed, that you are not swayed by games or emotions, she adapts, she levels up, she rises, or she exits. Either way, you remain unmoved, because the man who chooses himself first never loses. He knows that he doesn't need a relationship to feel complete. He doesn't need society's timeline to validate him. He doesn't settle just because he's supposed to. He becomes the standard. He becomes the prize. He becomes the one who decides who gets access to his world. And at that level, very few women qualify. But he's okay with that, because he would rather walk alone than walk with the wrong one. That is the power of solitude. That is the strength of sharpened standards. And once a man sees clearly, once he experiences peace, once he gets used to saying no to what doesn't align, there is no going back. Number 3, emotional strength replaces emotional neediness. There is a power most men never discover, not because it's hidden, but because it's uncomfortable. It's called emotional strength, and it's the antidote to the disease of modern masculinity, emotional neediness. See, emotional neediness isn't just about being too sensitive. It's about being unstable, reactive, dependent. Most men live like this without even realizing it. They don't lead with logic. They respond with emotion. They don't decide, they react. They chase after women who disrespect them. They explode when ignored. They collapse under pressure. They try to please everyone just to feel enough. They confuse emotional chaos with emotional connection, and it destroys their power. But something changes the day a man steps out of this cycle, when he finally withdraws from modern relationships, from approval seeking, from chasing validation. He starts to see what he couldn't before. That true strength begins with control, not of others, but of self. When a man sits alone long enough, without distraction, without flattery, without someone to constantly stroke his ego, he meets the version of himself most men never do. At first, it's brutal. The silence is sharp. The loneliness feels like failure. But over time, something deeper begins to form. Clarity. And with clarity comes choice. He no longer says yes to avoid conflict. He no longer reaches for women to feel whole. He no longer lets rejection define his worth. It becomes deliberate, measured, calm. That's emotional strength, and it only grows in the fire of solitude. Most men avoid that fire. They jump from woman to woman. They seek comfort in distractions. They surround themselves with noise, so they never have to face the weakness inside. But the man who stays alone long enough, he builds something unshakable. He learns to observe his emotions instead of obey them. He feels pain, but doesn't act from it. He feels anger, but doesn't lash out. He feels loneliness, but doesn't go begging for company. He becomes his own anchor. And here's the truth. Women test this constantly, sometimes consciously, often unconsciously, but always instinctively. They test not to hurt, but to measure. She wants to feel a man's strength, not just physical, but emotional. She wants to know, can he hold steady when I unravel? Will he stay grounded when I get chaotic? Is his confidence real, or does it crumble under pressure? So she pulls away. She challenges. She provokes. She introduces tension just to see if you can handle it. And most men fail. They beg. They argue. They panic. They try to fix something that was never broken. They fold. And in that moment, She loses all respect for them, because no matter how kind, how good-looking, or how well-meaning you are, if you cannot lead yourself emotionally, you cannot lead her, and a woman will never stay with a man she cannot respect. Now, let's be clear. Emotional strength isn't about being cold. It's not about suppressing your feelings or pretending not to care. It's about mastery. You feel it all, but you control the response. You don't react. You respond. You don't fold. You hold. You don't explain yourself endlessly. You stand firm in silence. This kind of man is rare, because this kind of man can't be manipulated. She pulls away, he stays centered. She gives attitude. He doesn't match it. She creates drama. He doesn't engage, not because he doesn't care, but because he refuses to lower his energy to meet chaos. That's power. Not control over here, but control over self. And she feels that, she respects that, she is drawn to that, because emotional chaos can't shake a man who's already made peace with himself. This man knows every emotion is temporary. Anger, sadness, desire, jealousy, they all come and go. But who he chooses to be, that is constant. He doesn't become a different man under pressure. He remains solid, grounded, certain, and that certainty becomes a magnet. People listen when he speaks. Women feel safe around him. Other men admire him, not because he dominates, but because he doesn't flinch. He is the eye in the storm. But don't be mistaken, he wasn't born this way. He built it through isolation, through heartbreak, through disappointment, through facing his worst fears and not running from them. Most men run. They avoid rejection. They fear being alone. They crumble without attention. But the man who has walked through the fire knows something they don't. That emotional strength is the foundation for everything else. Leadership, business, fatherhood, legacy. You cannot lead others if you cannot first lead yourself, and leading yourself means learning to sit in your own storm without needing anyone else to fix it for you. This man doesn't seek women to fill a void. He doesn't chase validation to feel alive. He doesn't hand his emotions over like a weapon. He is slow to anger, quick to walk away, unwilling to beg, and completely ready to be misunderstood. If that's the price of peace, this man is not easy to find, because he doesn't advertise himself. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't overplay his hand. But when he speaks, you listen. When he decides, you feel it. When he walks away, you remember it. And when a woman meets this man, she either rises to meet his emotional discipline or she disappears from his life. Not because he pushed her away, but because he refused to compromise his center. That's what separates the weak from the powerful, the reactive from the grounded, the boy who needs love to survive, from the man who offers love without losing himself. The emotionally strong man walks alone, if he must, not because he hates women, but because he refuses to be broken by them. He gives love, but never at the cost of his self-respect. He stays calm. When others try to provoke, he stays silent. When words are weaponized, he stays grounded. When emotions fly, and in that stillness, he becomes something most men will never be. Respected, not just by women, by everyone. And that's why the man who replaces emotional neediness with strength will never be ordinary again. Number 4. You gain an unstoppable focus. Every man wants to be powerful, but very few know the price, and even fewer are willing to pay it, because true power doesn't begin with wealth, or looks, or popularity. It begins with focus, and most men will never have it. Not because they're not capable, but because they're too distracted. They're too busy chasing women who don't respect them, too lost in social media, too caught up in drama, opinions, and cheap validation. They have no focus, and because of that, they have no power. But a rare kind of man chooses a different path. He steps away from the noise, from the games, from the endless cycle of emotional addiction. He isolates, he locks in, he lets go of anything that doesn't feed his future. And when he does, everything changes. At first, it's uncomfortable. He feels the pull to check in, to scroll, to go back to the familiar distractions. But he resists, and in that resistance, he grows. His mind starts to quiet. His thoughts sharpen. His vision clears. He's not chasing anymore. He's building. He wakes up early, not because someone told him to, but because he knows. Success doesn't wait for anyone. He trains his body with intent, not for attention, but because strength builds structure. Discipline creates peace. He's not texting women for entertainment. He's not wasting energy on shallow conversation. He's no longer living for the dopamine hits. He's living for purpose, and that shift, it rewires him. He starts seeing every hour of his day as an investment, and anything that doesn't grow his future gets cut. No second is spent on drama, no minute on confusion, no hour on energy that doesn't match his own, because now he understands focus is his currency, and he spends it only where it multiplies. The longer he stays on this path, the more his energy compounds. While other men are lost in chaos, he's gaining momentum. His career moves faster, his health transforms, his finances expand, his clarity deepens. And it's not because he's smarter, it's because he's not distracted. He's not getting pulled into emotional storms. He's not seduced by instant pleasure. He's not seeking anyone's approval. He's playing the long game, and he's winning. Women feel the difference. So do men. His silence commands attention. His stillness creates tension. He doesn't have to shout. He doesn't have to explain. His presence says everything. Why? Because focus creates force, and that force is impossible to ignore. He walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere, not with charm, but with certainty. He's not looking around for permission. He's not wondering who approves. He's already chosen himself. And because of that, he's already free. Free from weakness, free from distraction, free from the invisible chains that keep average men stuck in cycles of mediocrity. This man doesn't live for the moment. He lives to master it. He doesn't chase relationships to feel fulfilled. He builds a life so full that only the right woman can complement it, never complete it. And when people question him, criticize him, or try to pull him off track, he doesn't argue. He just keeps moving. He knows you don't owe explanations to people who live in confusion. His standards are high. His circle is small. His mission is non-negotiable. He cuts fast. He walks away easily, not out of coldness, but out of alignment, because anything that threatens his peace, anything that delays his progress, anything that drains his energy, has no place in his world. Not every woman qualifies. Not every opportunity gets a yes. Not every voice gets a response. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. He knows his time is limited, and he treats it that way. He doesn't delay the work. He doesn't wait for motivation. He doesn't live on someday. He acts now. He's not waiting to be chosen. He's not waiting to be discovered. He's already chosen himself, and he's becoming impossible to ignore. Why? Because the world has too many men who talk big and act small, who make promises and break them, who plan more than they execute. But the man with unshakable focus, he's different. He doesn't promise, he delivers. He doesn't plan forever. He starts today. He doesn't make noise. He builds results. And women can sense it. She feels when a man has no time for nonsense. She knows when his energy is valuable, and she respects him for it. She knows he's not available for games, not available for chaos, not available for emotional power plays, because this man doesn't live for reaction. He lives for impact, and if she doesn't align with that, he doesn't change. He doesn't chase. He lets her go, peacefully, powerfully, permanently, because he's no longer moved by what's temporary. He's building something eternal. This kind of focus turns a man from forgotten to unforgettable, from invisible to undeniable, from being controlled by the world to becoming the one who shapes it. It's not easy. It requires sacrifice. It demands discomfort, waking up early, training alone, saying no often, missing parties, being misunderstood, feeling isolated. But he doesn't mind, because he knows discipline today creates freedom tomorrow. And that freedom, it's priceless. It means you choose your path. You decide who stays. You control what enters your world. And once you taste that, you'll never go back to being distracted. That's why most men stay average. Because focus requires letting go of people, of comfort, of habits that feel good now, but cost everything later. The man who gains unstoppable focus is the one who says, "I'd rather be alone with my mission than surrounded by noise that slows me down." And that man, he doesn't chase success anymore. Success chases him. Number 5, relationships become an option, not a need. There comes a moment in a man's life when he no longer craves a relationship, not because he's bitter, but because he's whole. He's not chasing connection to feel complete. He's not looking for someone to fix what's missing, because nothing's missing anymore. This man has walked through solitude. He's sharpened his mind. He's cut out the noise. And now, relationships are no longer a need, they're a choice. He doesn't pursue love out of loneliness. He doesn't seek validation through attention. He no longer feels the pressure to settle down just to be accepted by society. He's not worried about fitting a timeline, not afraid of what people might say. If he's single at 35 or 45 or beyond, because he knows a man who builds himself becomes the standard, and when you are the standard, you don't chase anyone. You choose. His life is no longer organized around relationships. It's built around his mission, his peace, his discipline, his legacy. And from that place of power, he sees women differently. He's not hypnotized by beauty. He's not impressed by charm. He's not distracted by attention. He looks deeper. He sees character. Evaluates values. He observes how she supports, how she moves, what she brings beyond presence. Because he's no longer accepting anyone, just to fill a space. And women can sense this. They know when they've met a man who's not afraid to walk away. A man who won't bend his world to fit theirs. A man who doesn't need them to feel like a man. And that alone shifts the dynamic. He's not reacting to their energy. They're responding to his. Most men enter relationships because they feel they have no other choice. They fear being alone. They fear judgment. They fear missing out on something they've been told they should want. But that fear makes them weak. It makes them agreeable. It makes them easy to manipulate. They compromise their standards. just to be chosen. They give more than they get. They settle just to say they're not alone. But not this man. This man has spent years in solitude. He's studied himself. He's built. He's refined. And now he understands something most never will. A woman should enhance his life, not become the center of it. If she adds peace, if she strengthens his focus, if she supports his vision, she qualifies. But if she brings chaos, tests his patience, pulls him off path, he walks. No arguments, no pleading, no drama. He knows what he brings, and because of that, he's no longer afraid to walk away from anything that doesn't align. He's willing to be alone for as long as it takes to find a woman who meets his standards, instead of sacrificing his worth to meet hers. That's why powerful men don't settle. They don't chase women who don't bring value. They don't beg to be understood. They don't explain their boundaries. They decide, they filter, they select with precision, because when you become the kind of man who lives by design, who moves with discipline, who leads with purpose, you become rare. And what's rare is respected. So when she meets this man, the one who doesn't fold, doesn't chase, doesn't lose himself for love, something shifts in her. She begins to question herself. Why isn't he chasing? Why isn't he impressed? Why is he so grounded, so silent, so unaffected? Because she's used to men who perform, men who change themselves to win her, men who give up power to gain affection. But now, she's face to face with a man who sees her as she is and evaluates, not coldly, but clearly. She's not used to being measured. She's used to being adored, and that reversal creates curiosity, then attraction, then obsession, because for the first time, she's not in control. And he's just calm, not uninterested, but unwavering. He's not interested in fitting into her life. He's looking for a woman who fits into the life he's already building. He doesn't abandon his values for her attention. He doesn't pause his mission for a fleeting connection. He's not afraid of being misunderstood. He's afraid of being misaligned. And that's what makes him dangerous. He's no longer operating from need. He's operating from abundance. His cup is already full. He doesn't seek love to feel complete. He shares love because he has more than enough. And because of this, he sees through the illusions. He's not interested in modern dating games. He doesn't care for attention for attention's sake. He's not trying to impress. He's trying to build. So when he finally chooses a woman, he chooses with intention, not out of loneliness, not out of tradition, not because it's time, but because he found someone who brings peace, not pressure, support, not stress, clarity, not confusion. And if he doesn't find her, he stays alone, powerfully, peacefully, unapologetically, because the longer he stays single, the clearer he becomes. He sees the traps that once caught him, the people who drained him, the patterns that weakened him, and he refuses to repeat them. He no longer sees relationships as goals. He sees them as investments. And just like with money, he won't invest unless the return is worth it, because he knows his time is rare, his energy is priceless, his attention is sacred, and anyone who doesn't value that doesn't belong in his world. He is the prize, not because he demands it, but because he embodies it. So when he walks into a room, he moves different, he speaks different, he chooses different. He doesn't chase, he attracts. He doesn't explain, exemplifies. He doesn't plead, he positions. And women can feel that difference. He doesn't need to say he's high value. She knows. Everyone does. Because you can't fake the peace that comes from being whole. And that's what makes him irresistible. Not because he's trying to be, but because he no longer needs to be. Every second you waste chasing the wrong woman, begging for attention, or compromising your standards for comfort is a second you'll never get back. You were not born to live a life of regret. You were born to rise, to build, to sharpen, to lead. And every day you remain single, but focused. You become more dangerous to the world that wants to keep you distracted. This isn't about hating love. It's about learning to love yourself first. Because the man who chooses himself over drama, over chaos, over convenience, is the man who commands a different level of power. He stops settling. He stops chasing. He starts selecting. He walks with direction. He speaks with clarity. And he lives by a standard most men are too afraid to set. When that man enters a room, everyone feels it. Because confidence doesn't speak. It radiates. If this message hits you deep, don't just nod and scroll away. Act. Comment below. I refuse to settle. Click like. Hit subscribe. And send this to a brother who needs to hear the truth before he wastes another year on the wrong path. This isn't just content. This is your checkpoint. This is your mirror. And if you're ready to become the man you were meant to be, start now.